Welcome, everybody. Good afternoon. It's quite a turnout, more than we expected, given what the weather prediction was saying. So, thank you all for coming out and braving the big storm that they were talking about. Um, I'm Christina Diliaco. I'm the Tibetan Studies Librarian at CV Star East Asian Library. And again, welcome to today's talk. And for those of you joining us by Zoom, and I think there are quite a number of people joining us. When I last checked, it was about 50 people. Yeah, New York City is currently having they predicted a big snowstorm, but it's very, very nice and beautiful. So thank you all for coming in person, and thank you all of you out joining us remotely by Zoom in the Zoomscape today. So it is our great pleasure to host a talk today by Dr. Geshe Lobsang Monlam, especially on a topic that currently comes up frequently in our conversations, both personal and professional. And as AI is becoming a part of our daily lives, whether we are aware of it or not. The application of artificial intelligence for Tibetan language and Tibetan knowledge systems is a breathtaking and for some of us sort of mind-blowing, maybe even life-changing step for Tibetan and Tibetan studies communities, and one that will change the landscape and approach for how we create, manage, and use Tibetan language resources, and how we engage with these resources and with each other. And it's no surprise that the person leading the way is the Venerable Geshe Monlam. Geshe Lobsang Monlam has dedicated his life to integrating Tibetan knowledge into the digital world. His educational journey began at a local monastery, followed by enrollment at the Sera Thoesam Norling Monastic Institute. After 16 years of study, he passed his Geshe examination in 2013. Geshe Lobsang Monlam has had an early interest in art, especially in Western oil painting and Tibetan Tanka painting, in which he is self-taught. In the early 2000s, he planned and drew the architectural designs for a new assembly hall for Sera Monastery. And while he was developing his passion and skill in art and design, he developed a passion for gadgets and computers as well, and for programming. And in 2005, he introduced his first suite of Monlam Tibetan fonts, a confluence of his two interests in art and design and computing. The fonts remain beloved for their beauty and their variety. Under Monlam IT, he subsequently developed 37 software programs available on Android, iOS, Windows, and Mac OS. The Monlam Dictionary app has been downloaded by millions worldwide, and all of these applications are free. They've been distributed for free since the start. In 2022, Geshe Monlam and his team of more than 150 editors and staff published the Grand Monlam Tibetan Dictionary, containing Tibetan language definitions for over 360,000 word entries. The print version of this resource numbers 223 volumes currently and is growing. We were talking earlier, Geshe anticipates maybe it'll reach even 500 volumes. So that's something for the library to look forward to. And to his many accomplishments, Geshe recently also earned a PhD in library science in 2023. Geshe-la's work for the advancement and sharing of Tibetan knowledge in the digital sphere is acknowledged by prominent religious leaders, notably His Holiness the 14th Dalai Lama, and he has visited universities and research institutes to share his work and insights and learn from computer science experts. Daily meditation practice is integral to his routine. Geshe Lobsang Monlam's latest initiative is the Monlam AI and Tibetan Digital Library Project, and we are so excited to learn more about those today. Another member of the Monlam IT and Monlam AI team is here with us as well, Mr. Tenzin Norsangla, who has worked with the Central Tibetan Administration for 10 years and is now working with Geshe to expand his projects, and he's going to introduce Geshe-la's work to us. This event is co-sponsored by the CV Star East Asian Library and the Modern Tibetan Studies program at Columbia University, and we would also like to thank Weatherhead East Asian Institute. Geshe will be taking questions after the presentations, and if you're joining us on Zoom, please type your questions in the Q&A box, and we'll be monitoring those. So without further ado, I'd like to invite Mr. Tenzin Norsangla to give opening remarks.
Yeah, I'll do this. Thank you so much, Christina. And thank you so much for taking time. It was predicted the weather was going to be pretty bad, but it looks like nice sunny. Not yet. I think there was some sun back then. But yeah, thank you so much for turning up. I'll do a very quick 5-minute presentation about Geshe Monlam and the work that he's been doing, the work that is done, and also a bit about the immediate future. So this is a very interesting topic that we stumbled upon during many discussions that we've been having. Technology is going at a pace that ethics is not able to keep up. And for us, Tibetans, language, culture, and identity, again, that's also being left behind. And that's something that really we need to keep a balance of for more positivity, right? There used to be a time when humans used to learn the machine language, and now we're teaching machines the human language, right? So Monlam Tibetan IT Research Center, as Christina mentioned, it was in 2002, I think. So Geshe Monlam is a painter, an artist, and he paints a lot of thangkas. He's really good at. So his monastery in South India gave him the responsibility of designing the big prayer hall of his monastery, right? He did a great job, and people came up to him and made a few donations. And I think the amount came up to maybe like around 500 USD. That's when he bought the first computer there, right? And then Monlam Fonts in 2005, His Holiness called Geshe Monlam to Dharamsala and said, "You're doing great work. You should set up office in Dharamsala." And 2012, he set up his office in Dharamsala, and since then, we've come out with a lot of projects. Monlam Dictionary is another very interesting one that's been picked up across the world, millions of downloads. And also a Tibetan library management system. So it was in 2016 when Geshe started to work on cataloging Tibetan resources and realized that there was no real professionals in terms of, who had advanced education in Tibetan library management systems. So Geshe took it upon himself and started his PhD and completed his PhD on Tibetan library management system in 2023, last year. So it won't be a lie if I say that Monlam IT organization is in connection with more than 95% of all religious organizations, Tibetan Buddhist religious organizations. The Grand Dictionary, I'll talk a little more about it next slide, but the Grand Dictionary is the 223 volume that Christine was talking about, right? It took us 9 years. But as we began engagements with international organizations, we realized that AI is the next generation tool that we should be using. And 2023, we started with Monlam AI and officially launched it in November of 2023. So yeah, Monlam Grand Dictionary, 223 volumes, more than 150 scholars, full-time engaged for 9 years. And as of now, we believe we've just covered 60% of what's out there. So yeah, we still have a lot more to do, but then we believe that we couldn't wait to complete it 100%. So we came out with 222 volumes. We're still working on the remaining. More than 350 pages across in this, and I think it weighs around more than 500 pounds. The full 223 volume dictionary. We're trying to move it here to the Library of Congress sometime very soon. But yeah, Monlam IT also does a lot of social services with the Central Tibetan Administration, with schools and monastic institutions, especially with how we can use technology towards preservation of language and culture and philosophies. So His Holiness the Dalai Lama has been our biggest inspiration, and of course, he's been that guiding light for us. He's the one who set us up in Dharamsala, and this is, I think, during the Monlam Grand Dictionary launch event. So across every milestone, we've been engaging, or rather getting blessings from His Holiness. And that's the first one when we came up with the font, and then the dictionary, when he's got his PhD, the Grand Dictionary, and Monlam AI last, right? Advisors from different religious sects, from prominent esteemed organizations and individuals as well. Some great partners that we've been working with. So Monlam AI started in 2023, and of course, you'll be aware, you'll know that it's a visual speech, the hearing, and this is the 4 models that we have right now. It's the translation between Tibetan and English, speech to text, text to speech, and OCR, all in the Tibetan language. And all of them done by youths, right? This is the team that during the launch 80%, I think, more than 80% of our teams are youth. To 315 as of now. We're onboarding 67 more. And yeah, 80%, 85% done by youth. So we strongly believe in engagement with the youth. I think the youth is that really, really important piece, that in the success of the work that we're doing. So yeah, a simple vision is Monlam AI is like an highway, and really wanting to engage with different stakeholders to use that highway, right? So a few current challenges that we see, especially from a standpoint of being a Tibetan and preservation of the Tibetan language and culture. There's really little resources. Access to them is very difficult. We don't have modern education resources in the Tibetan language. So the immediate 3 programs or projects that we are going to begin is translating 500 modern education books into Tibetan language, and then I think that's like a standard for AI to really take it forward. After that, also illustrations. I think right now we were able to only develop between 10 to 15 animation or illustration-based learning for the Tibetan kids. I think we can do that 10, 15 in a day if we use AI, right? So yeah, that's another big project. And then Chinese and Tibetan mission translations. That's another project that we are starting very, very soon. The bigger one is Monlam Tech in Bangalore. Bangalore is a place, the IT hub of India, as well as it's close to the biggest, largest Tibetan community in exile, as well as the largest monasteries also in India, South India, engaging with anywhere between 100 to 150 individuals from different walks of life at that center. And here is when we will try and really talk more about ethics, philosophy, rational logic of the Buddhist culture, and how that can synergize with AI and technology, and for positivity, really, and maybe mitigate the risk as well, that all the negativity that's around AI and its technology. And I think there's a lot of scope in sectors like mental health, Tibetan language, resources, as well as anybody interested in Buddhist philosophies. So this is the big one. And the keywords are universal responsibility and secular ethics. I'll finish here by, again, coming back to ethics and how important that is to balance, to keep the negativity, the risk away from the great technology, artificial intelligence. And for us, Tibetans particularly, it's language, identity, and culture. That's also has to be in balance at pace with technology. Thank you.
If I can also just take a moment to thank Tenzin Galikla for translating for us.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you for having me. And also, my English is very limited, so I'm better in English. Tibet, please. Okay. Numbers of Tamala to and the Pavalia, and in the Dilla, Columbia University, Geshe somebody and Tambudi on the Gigi put to be charging of the ticket that some ship. You don't get logo and Delia. And
We learn from His Holiness's teaching that he often emphasized the importance and the unique contributions that Buddhism can offer, and Buddhism being very profound and also expansive, and has so much potential to making this constructive contribution. And then this really become for me, first-hand experiences when I started working on the dictionary project for the past over 10 years, decades, through working with our dictionary project. And then I realized how profound, expansive, bodies of and the volumes of the literatures available in Buddhism, and how they can be constructively used and to make further contributions.
제가 니랑 미 여다 엄지야 뭐 지금 로 굴러려 가지고 전에 자야 몇 줄 지금 있었어. 당당하게 돼 저저 project type page 요말 안 되네 아주 신의 지원 단도 năng 좀 자요 page 비유기 저 쇼를 사이언스 인지 나와서 잘해 숨주 근데 지금 좀 비나 쇼를 사이어 project 비유기 돼 그렇습니다 아니 안 되지 page 매만 근데 좀 번에 나도 좀 이 맞는 알아 염려 건설을 좀
And so as we work on our dictionary project, I realized how expensive the subject is. Working with over 150 scholars and researchers and collecting the information among the Tibetan resources. We went over kind of exploring over 30 million pages of Tibetan original sources. And when you read and go through them, they're incredibly profound in terms of the subject, so expansive. And I realized how, as His Holiness mentioned, impactful these resources are for our community.
그래서 단당 아주 심지어도 비행이 인지라 주자고 대동다숨 양마지가 두 이는 니기 단다 벽이 익사되게 자자지에 농민들스러워 비행이 인지라 주자고 찾아고
And also, as we went over these materials, and we are only able to really cover or recover 60% of the literature resources already available, and we're still continuing that work. And then when we're looking at to see what are the resources in terms of translation, and so far we discovered about 3,000 books and materials are translated from Tibetan into English.
니기 비행이 주자 인지가 주자고 자자지기 농민들
This is, only max up to 1% of the, translation work from Tibetan into English so far that we obtained.
Okay. 니 집자듯이 다 가르쳐 그래. 직 출력에 열다 이나 출력 지구 말했어. 즉 따뜻다 생각을 받았다. 하정을 타지고다 된레시아스로 안 디지드 땅을 단단히 따고 야야 땅 따디 야지 땅에 간다 간데 제국에 나한테 삼노주는 뭐 땅이 있어.
And as we explore this, mass of resources, we also discovered it's not just Buddhism that we're working with. There's like a system of philosophies, psychology, and many other subjects contained among this Tibetan literature. And so seeing these, vast materials and resources, now we're really looking into what we can do with these materials. So this is a stage we're really exploring these potential possibilities.
그래서 근데 또 열지 생각 간데 지그래서 나고 조세다 부셀라 때제 아니 가서 저거요 다 가서 부카야가요나 안 따디 열지세야지 드리줄라 페이지 거기요 다스라
So when you talk about development and progress, basically the two of the primary criterions used, one is the speed, the other is the quality. And so this is where we're looking at right now, how we can use these two criterions to improve the resources and making them accessible easily.
제가 아니 드네 선상 가지 갑자기 고사스는 챌린지 저 직디 직 모던 디차디셔스와 모던 테크놀로지 걸라노 야 안 디기 조세다 뭐저기 게 수션 안 디기 조세 차니 뭐 맞춰봐이나 안 따디 강의 신부터 따디니 용도 있어요.
So when we're looking at these possibilities and potentials, one challenge that we identified is the speed in terms of the modern technologies, and then looking at the status of the Tibetan technologies. There's a huge gap between what we're working with and the progress of the modern technology. So that's one challenges that we identified.
야, zamlin chön la teba na ta technology di ta shukshin ba shiwaji gi sbe jogo chari na ta ethic ki chodi ta bit shiwaji ta zamlin di la kangi mago ya di gi quality de gyose ta ta chi technology shugo mazum bachine tan zamli chyon ta ti kang ye sevres am phobala ti kang la mixer ki tan ya ta chapsi ta tani sosu manjom ba ta antine che ni ge kang ye ti zamli ki ge shugo summa te kang ye te thusro ta di nga se la shukya yes.
So right now, there are two areas that we are concentrating in terms of our work. The first one is when you look at the modern technology and its progress, one thing that you see the gap is the relationship between the ethical issues and the modern technology. There's a huge gap. While the modern technology is really speeding fast, the issues relating to the ethical matters are left behind. That's something we identify. Another challenge is the modern technology and its relationship to the Tibetan technologies and the status of the language. You can see the Tibetan language, feeling the danger and the threat, and also for a number of reasons, political, social, and our own, the shortcomings. We are not able to catch up with the modern technology. So Tibetan language is left pretty much a little bit behind in terms of the progress of the modern technology. And these two areas where we identified and see as a challenge and kind of working and exploring the number of ways we can really fix these problems.
Yeah,现在我可以一起个是那ethics and the restriction and the gauge and the technology the 상황이 적세대 찬연부 차고 있나 아니 점리라 강에 매와 밀로 팬도 여바로 어디 다 야고 용어에서 매 이지치기였어요.
So what I'm really thinking is that when you look at the current status of progress in terms of technology, we need to consider the culture, the ethics, language, and the technology. And when you pay attention equally to these four important criterions, and this will really be able to produce something, an outcome that is satisfactory to many of us.
아니야, 그 표바로 차샤고는 미장 유용체 리용 다침보 용에 된대게 지소 차샤고는 따뜻하게 AI 생기디 하장 편도보다 아니 디기 미사식나 미사 쭉 누버직 버터비하다 전종 배송 지야로 사실하게 누버침 버지레스군요.
And for Tibetans, the AI, I think, plays a very important role, or would play a very important role. This is because the Tibetan has this vast amount of resources. And then our population is very small. So when you use the AI properly, this will really able to fill the gap. With work and the functions of the AI, you can really speed and you can contribute, and provide output that triples or duplicate a number of the volumes.
온던들이라 때제도나 저기 시지 이야기 모델 시리직도나 소당 소신부 인스라 안다나 저기 로숨기 리처트 그래서 이나 로 당부기 준비라 때나 라마온발로네 세단 덴부지 용레샤스 다 디지는 안제 저발라 마온발로 숨기 지라 아니 벽이 최단 리션도 제당 저기 기 망고지가 나로라 안전 좀 됐으면 제도야 아니 되네 그런 공포영은 뜻을래 펜토 영역이다 누가 첨부지 된체 아니 다 계획 para 각자가 강에 들어가는 거 쉽게 했어요.
And when we look at the current state of the project, our plan for the AI project is 3 years. Right now, we are on the first year, and looking at the accomplishment of the first year project, we're very optimistic. And we strongly believe that we will be able to have this kind of a communication between the languages, between Tibetan, English, and others. Through that facilities, it will really provide an impactful contribution in terms of a communication across the populations and the cultures.
No.
And our kind of development of the AI project is right now is kind of the basic framework or the foundation. We're really building this, foundational structure right now.
지금 단어한 저기 machine translation 제 아니 OCR 제 and text to speech text the D model ship so what is the dog 냐만에 아니 가서 때 language model and thing also done the law of interpretation by use.
And so right now, we're working on, 4 main areas of the AI sector, which is the translation, and then the speech to text and text to speech, and
OCR.
And then OCR, the
recognition.
scan, the image recognition project. And then the next stage of our project would be
language model.
the language model, and is primarily editing work.
And these you thing as a large language models the service the so now Puyuki Tagishu de Shonasa Sumji Samage and then on the charity that you
And then our next stage of the project is a large language model. This is basically we're training the machine, going over this in 30 million pages. And so it will play important role in creating like the chatbot. Chat GPT.
No, sorry. Okay, then page the Dalai Lama AI to this would see on cigarettes, right? Dalai Lama AI is yeah,
And then after this, initial project, and then we can maybe provide, more specific, the technologies. For example, say Dalai Lama AI, just one example. So we will be producing more of these facilities, tools.
그래서 네 저는 ben 하이 달라마 같이 강의 되도 가르쳐 버렸으면 태갈 남던 유튜브를 했어요.
And so that you can communicate with the machine, say, hi, Dalai Lama AI, I have this problem, can you help me? And it'll provide you all the information you need.
Yeah. On digital 식대에서 단다기 source 있잖아요, 지금. 안 되면 뭐다 주셔줘. 개인들 럽트치죠. 다치서 동자 트라마 가서 열었어. 안 되게 상황 거기 놓치려고 그랬지.
저도 이걸 audio
video.
So right now, we're primarily relying on the textual sources. And then we also have a number of, huge volumes of recordings of lectures, either in form of audio or video. And we will utilize them to enrich these vast, collections of the resources.
세상 저기 Dalai Lama AI Sera 그 배는 점령 가나 미직라 내가 좀보 용이 겹자 그게 Dalai Lama 나신 백공부 인스레스 들고
So for example, the Dalai Lama AI, one example, this is because, if you look at the resources, per head, the Dalai Lama seems to have the most rich and, the largest collections of the resources for, an individual.
Dalai Lama's 게 record చే서 취직도 동작선 났어.
And we have so, for example, as I mentioned, the Dalai Lama has a huge volumes of the collections for, his personal contributions. And we have recordings of His Holiness teaching, over 1,300.
13,000.
13,000 hours of the recorded teachings by the Dalai Lama.
아니 여러분이 센터에 비타기 담문다나 이쪽에 동다지로
And His Holiness' name, there are over 1,000 books published under his name.
Yeah, a different language. Yeah.
And different language. They all come in different languages.
Yeah. 제가 미직라데 급잡대 공부로 안테 빼안 내가 좀 버렸지. 주력지고 말다 드럼다. 안 디지트 다 도도로 쇼비나 직대당에서 표기 이렇게 좀 출루게 손접지하다 건너 거친 버렸어. 아니 이번에 당에서 대 답했던 거로 메라. 술라 거기나 다디 게이션 니션도 봐. 저거 그 잡혔던 거 다디 누가 좀 쉬지 저거 텐트 것도
So as you have seen, for His Holiness's, collection or contributions is a vast amount. And in terms of the subject, they're not merely on Buddhism. It covers many other Buddhism, and also some of the secular subject. And so when AI is developed, we will be able to provide this in different languages in a kind of timely manner, so that it will serve as a platform to promote, these materials, to make this accessible to worldwide. One of the important, the function of the technology is to really promote and to spread knowledge. And so AI would play this very important, role in speeding up and spreading and making this globally accessible.
Yeah, man, then you what the done something gonna AI ethic gonna talk or simple you ta and mom bala can de cha ma cha de then some tang ni mo ji la yang ko ta ko simple ta de ma ko yung res what in the chin res.
And then, as you know, another important question about the AI and the technology is the ethic, the ethical concerns. And many people do, have concerns about the, ethical issues relating to technology. And we also identify that's one of the important issues in relationship with the AI and the technology development. And we are focusing our work on that too.
Yeah, 지금 당 맞이 섬도 동다로 집에는 더디도 AI 생기도 그런 개개 말에 동부 동자지래 안 콜라 맞이기 로미기 쉬운 거 롭정 때당 간에 아니 담만 발라 그 야부차다 누가 삭세된 담가디 담부 롭정 때당 가다래요 그랬어요.
And AI by itself is a piece of a blank object. And then how we really make the output is that how we train the machine. And so, when you offer proper training, the output also will be, accordingly. And therefore, one of our important really initiative is training the AI so that it will be more productive. And in that, doing that, so addresses the issue about the ethical.
제가 당아제 부위 진전지가 다 미하고 서다마서 밤에 롭정 야구 때다마데 저거지 되라는 게 진짜 친구들에서
Just like how we nurture and train a child, the output is pretty much dependent on how we really engage with that child. This is exactly the same logic with AI.
야, 지지도 단단한 저기 점내 최연의 AI 롭정 뒤가래서는 저기 에 단내기 가지고 돌아미기 쉬운데 제 엔디 더 저러잖아. 다 예, 저기 너저 쉬운 기더 서서 미길 안 담보자고 쉬운 거 너무 지간에 그걸 좀 되게 어렸어요. 안 디지도 맞이 미 일단 너저로 찾아오는 다 서서 뒤안 담보 지대가 뒤가나 안 담보 인거 같다. 제 개시주지 안 디지비 쉬운 거 너무 지간은 버려고. 디파 AI 너무 좀 되게 어렸어요. 안 디디 AI 디 컨트롤 차그지 저런서 때내려고. 야.
Right now, if you look at the AI culture, AI orientation, and so on, the production is that they're primarily based on the Western education. The way the machine is trained is according to the principle of modern or Western education, in which is the self-interest and it becomes the most important at the priority. So when you train a machine to really merely take care of our individual need, and then what can you expect out of that machine later?
And then machine key I think it is sort of machine corona to
And then the problem with that is when you train the machine to be what you call self-interest based, right? Mechanism. And then when the machine think about the self, what self the machine would point at. So that's really a very important issue.
Yeah, check this. And you what the machine Joseph me lava Joseph even machine telling George Chavina. And the Romy was a Kogatanzi tourist, machine Levachi Joseph. And being on the Romy something Joseph Gala Levina.
And then I also think once we train the machine and the machine is able to, pass the human capacity and the speed, when the machine really overtakes the human, speed, then when the machine is trained to be, taking care of the self-interest, then what's going to happen? What that, leave to the human beings? So that I think is another important question when we look into the AI culture.
세상 다 뒤서 녀다 사버렸어. 이나 디기 강에서 탑라면 되다 말했어. 뭐냐 어쨌든 남비 쇼나 셰셔베 에 따뜻한 사고도 사이콜로지도 늦게 너나 따위나 아니 소소리 신자 신부 선거 베스트 셰셔보다 이나 가서 생기 지기 그래. 근데 네 남력직 요리서. 근데 네 간에 계속 들어와나 야 벨로가 창그랬어요.
So these are really concerning this. I think we all share the similar concern about the trend of the AI development. And then if we look at, the Buddhism or, also the materials available on secular, issues in Tibetan or in other literatures, and there is this distinctive, training, especially training of taking care of others, really taking care of others above your own interests. In the Buddhist literature, they call the cherishing the others. And if you are able to train machine in that way, then this will be a productive, the counterproductive to the current trend where the machines only train to serve the interest of, the few individuals. So that's, I think, I feel a unique contribution that we can make in terms of the AI training and so on.
Yeah. 当然这都是全用的这个台湾那这些老我自己了，咱们给慢慢的嘛都些，安尼的 robot 的他没忙不起，没事过这个时候，他等着用些，安尼你们这两个做给这些是吧？看了所以但他们的用一把他学的是吧？安咱们给premier给。खर्च होता है तो समझो ले लेते हालम जमने की जनर के दापो थी फिल्में छाटू को तेने फिल्में जमने की जनर के दापो जाओ क्या शायद हो जाए ना तंदा इन्हें प्रूव हुआ तब फिल्में छाटू फिल्में छाटू से अंतने फिल्में वहाँ से छेड़ रहे ना मिगी बुझिया की जैसे ते मां छाटू इंबर अंतने लावर तो ताता ना से अफ्रीका ता अने खची लोग बदजुला मेंबर या फाड़ दिया चलो देर मेरे में मां छाट and zamlin member the but shira madhya go to get the long of you but do it that they touch over and teach the tang domi lagachi go teach the that robert mountain and something in mida jik jan you geje shengi robochi on colors of the motor tang on that you nang lagachi on some of the and the robert the 너랑 안 당면 생기지 저랑 그거 돼요. 근데 전화하고 전화 안 당고 생기지 그거를 야는 냠도 채고도 내가 딜이서 다 독사들어. 근데 sonda 다 누수 뺀 내가 친구들이 누수요.
So if you look at the future trend, in 50 years, the global population, human population will decline quite sharply for a number of reasons. One thing is that by 2030, I think the wealth generators, in terms of gender, the female, I think the wealth owners will increase dramatically. And that also contributes in the population decline because as, females, when they have more roles, occupations, they also have a relationship in terms of declining the protection, what you call the birth protection, right? And also, although right now the populations in the Middle East and Africa seems like increasing, but in next 50 years, they will also start declining. So this global human population declining and the increases of the robots over the next 50 years. And so we will be relying on the partnering more with, AI or the robots. And so when you look at that, relationship, the new kind of relationship with the humans and machine. And then think about this, where you have now the increasing number of robot, populations who are trained to be almost like a selfish, who are trained according to our current education trend to really take care of the self-interest. And so what that, leaves to us, what that, going to shape the global culture? And this is for me, a very important question.
Yeah, that the Chitan Reservoir. In a Mazuta, the Zuzu, some of Tambin, the you are down together, never yet a Cocabragi, Mesro. In a Dangaranzu check where the that's a contribution to take Moraling in 2 years. No.
So this is the trend, it seems, we are heading to. And from my own perspective, how much we can contribute, to really remedy this trend, I'm not sure. But at least I'm determined to do something about it. So do whatever that I can do at my own kind of contribution to really try to make a small, change. So that's, my own determination in this AI project.
Yeah, digital conduct dig Gala Mandana, Tashi Major, the Takin left the Mazu Shuala Mandana, Jill Tepto Rocco. And the young Dra Mandana, young Tagishi in something chewing on a canyon and the young year. The one nation on the chick Zanchu, tagging issue there today, and the gay restriction, Chulu, Zanchu, and truly that is a Chanyum Butchik. That Joseph and Pussy Chanyum Bachana, and Koyarjin draw Mandania Chiparis, Taco, Tara, Devata Chipper, Chariot. That the some language to see.
So when you look at this trend and where we're heading to, that is something we cannot stop. It's like inevitable. And so seeing this inevitable trend, I, feel that one of the area that we can do, at least to, promote our own interest, is to really creating a balance in terms of the speed among the culture, technology, language, and ethics, and so on. And when you're able to really work and to create a balanced progress, this is one way of really meeting the challenge that I mentioned before.
Yeah. Chizang that did to do was surging Lamlu Mango Chicken Shingi go. Juba Matana that is been a surging tool chicken, Tinabla, to China to Severis.
And so this also tells us that our kind of the traditional way of production or the things that we do according to strict tradition, we need to change that, and we need to really create some system which will be more suitable with this kind of technology culture.
And I was that should not really want to go that did not do that in a little bit, but that didn't never do chicken. And was a rickshaw, Chulu, Takarina, Lamlu Magujitan, Jova Matana.
So this is just one simple example. Traditionally, we Tibetans, we rely on horses for our transportation. But of course, rely on aeroplane is much faster. Like this one, when you're looking at, like Buddhism, other cultures, we need to adapt this to new change and really to work within this system.
Yeah, Zavita Tindichi, and then numbers of some Sukari and the tick on the total engineer. And then Tangazu, some certain new Tangara contemporary numbers of what to show years, and numbers of two Korean to one.
So this is from my opinion, and I've been sharing my thoughts with you. And so now we can, put this on the floor and discuss, see what are some of your main concerns in relationship, AI development.
Thank you.
Thank you, Geshe. So now we're going to take questions from the audience, and I would encourage those watching on Zoom to please post your questions in the chat. Yes. So does anyone have a question here?
Thank you very much for the really lovely lecture. And I think the project and the consideration related Tibetan culture and language to AI is very it's so impressive and very important in our age. As a very junior Tibetan language learner, I wonder how do you actually fix the problem of Tibetan dialect? Because I know that there are many different expressions for one word. And it's hard even for like Tibetan people from different regions to communicate sometimes. So I wonder, how do you fix, how do you progress on this in this project? And I also have a second question is, in terms of technology, like the tech people, like the IT people, who do you cooperate with? And for instance, do you cooperate with those big companies like Google, ChatGPT or something? And what, if you have presented your idea to them, what are their reactions towards this project? Thank you very much.
저는 그런 배우기 예의 다르신다 진유의 이게 저와디가 준비 야우충수 그런 게 비유로 있어. 그때는 저와디 니스. 당고대 먼저 지금 배우기 예의나 유게 만다 막 싶어. 이 만다도 그런서 티치야 누구를 당을 딘도 편주윤의 그거요 말았습니다. 이건 AI 잘해 가는 거. 니는 그저 디지털 잘하는데 그야 recommend the leros of the two tech company Google the Apple today as control ya get that and air renew what it's a control them good the conditions.
Yeah. Okay. The Hong the Karsugare Perla than the Titu game Madangi, hope the connection of Chikichiga Magojo, digital news and Dinane the chapter of the Judah. And digital dynamics Judy dynamics so the social beings, and it's been as dark as you when the Chasantic Soyagi AI good and you can get the Chasan also get a quarter on a Jurtavajar, chicken on the deep best issue use, and you were done the friends in Bakun than the Necola thing in the language to go back and Kunga young number projection. And the neural linguistic and also AI parula draw to say the pugi the kid tamara yovatiro. Puga lagone chick do Moran Papa in such shoot the Pugilla Shinko Java the Mares. Zamni Digana get the Tondamagoro to dinner and one Kurtu on the Wanza Sera, you were Kurtu down to me, Nuva Chishi, Sumia, the dinner. The Amazonia and down the Nicaragua chick thing on terms of living it was teacher pays of the Chiboris and dinner you get the custom pay the rest and teach you mix tell a cursor gay crown check you the animals dig novel attention and in Lomzang me level Jovatan to get a Nuba Chechon Java. On the day per Mongo is that thing as the Shumjik Chen, Mount the Seneca Lamne as the proofs in the day I said into this about 2 years and digital not do Revala Lokashi Jetla and you get down the Mobi de Vataji Pasu Kangi set to should carry us a competition. Now,
question, getting back to your first question, in terms of the dialect, it's true that the Tibetan, I think, the language has so many sub-dialects. And when we're looking at these, we already paid attention on these. There are over 72 different dialects identified. But then when we go deeper, only about 10, like distinctive dialects among the Tibetan. And we already identified these. And we're working with some of the linguists and the scholars to really produce an program which will enable us to recognize between these. For example, we're working with Professor Nicolas Torrent, the French linguist, and he's helping us in terms of the relationship between the neurology and the language. By working with this linguist, I'm also excited to find that some of the linguists identified there are primarily 3 languages that have the very potent impact on changing the neurons through kind of their language, and they identified one Amazon, one of the areas in Amazon regions, a language, and then another one, and then is third one's Tibetan. Of these 3 unique languages, the Tibetan is the only one which has a writing system. And so we're very optimistic. Working with these scientists, we can address this regional dialect and how to recognize and translate and create a common platform where it can be, the exchange naturally.
Niba ti Monlam AI dita ko Google ta Apple den dewa ke ta chi chu ma song ina ta ma tunga jimma de Apple la Apple ki nangbe developer ko zo nyam dang song de chu so yes ro and diga na zo ke chi ngo res and Berkeley nga zo nyam de chi tanda ngo zo lam ko zo ki ya ki kiwon de ngo zo lam da chi ngo zo la chi ni ro tan ro shin ba de res. Cambridge University Cambridge England now teach to Google Apple open that music to mess in a
So right now we don't have any formal collaboration or partnership with these big tech companies. I'm visiting California next week, and we're working with the UC Berkeley. Also, we're working with other, scholars and scientists, including the Cambridge University in the UK. And they are, like scientists and scholars who are collaborating, advising our project.
Stanford language, Stanford University.
Stanford.
Stanford.
We also have arranged a meeting with scholars at Stanford University.
And then people shall go to Thoesam sharing and did get to the
engineer to the
and Johnson and the
That's
near this to the Tadanga the part of Korea Mangostua, Dina that not the paper and the script shifted Jorva. This are now your tomato or this Georgic. To new dictator, the naked dinner printed the young gorgeous soon or the country, dequalia to teach session of a
So 2 questions. The first question is for translation tools. Do Tibetan have a script shift? Script shifter. Second one is you mentioned about the library management project, and can you elaborate a little bit on that? The script
shifted the didn't have be convert change over. Yes, Tadang Activation, Library Congress now the European database language over. They give to them as the translation.
The translator.
Skip shifters.
I read it down. No.
Skip shifter the web browsers
No.
then the digital library project and digital project and digital so the project permitted to correct any addition rupture and general nangi permitted to all you the gonding gasumju na and the digi you changing by the digit scan ta and give the and the karchati and the mind bag to slow university and choba the country and nyamre contact tado benzo chimbu and the penzo da karcha the je samay badi gavlo la AI gi pen catalog the AI so we are ko pen thebra je to parji javena ko namza ko karcha ti kuran ti singre ma dene the OCR ta yor dene ige shuda ta yor and dene dragon loya yor and debdi not to yingbodi go na ko yingdo jin kuran AI gi dene chidu ta tin javlo de la dene mangu shi tu yor ko khanda di mong balo longin de zola tab dere me an dene khartu ko na ki shamba shamba la gyora yu gyo dene gi tana lichar chimbo ji to gar.
So to answer the previous question, the script shifter, yes, I know what you're talking about, and we have that the technique or the technology for Tibetan too. Regarding the second question about the library management project, right now I am heading a major mega digital library project sponsored by the Central Tibetan Administration. This is basically, we're working with over 230 monasteries and academic institutions in India, where these individual monasteries' collections will be stored at this large digital library, in which we will also embed or incorporate the AI technology, so that when you have this vast, online library, where the resources contributed by these different monasteries, and the AI will basically provide the function in terms of creating catalogs, organizing, and data listing, and so on. So this is in relation to a library management development. I'm heading that project.
A number of questions that have come in online. One you've already answered partially. Is Geshe Monlam's project associated with Google? And I'm wondering why, does he know why or what deters Google translation to provide Tibetan and English or vice versa translation?
아니, 자기는 주어가지고 단데 램프 인스. 예. 아니, 주어 전부디 기심론 나타는 구글 님보 클라버 치고요 베스. 아니, 단데 구글 나에 이 규저와. 디나야다 단데 비 요마로 이 가르치는 구글게 디나 비율로 말했어.
Oh yeah. Dire Google nga tanda par chida nga yi ton chibden na Google na chi tone chongdo chida konyo yo. Ngema nge Google la ige mangu tan chuni ya chi mi dusro. Ani Google la junju che shole jugni ji pui kan la ti shole jugni ji ani di chi nga de Oxford na ze gena inji ya hui ji gen sirin ton la yo. Kong inji gyur je ani Google la tan yo. Ani Google de che so ani nga Google tam ji do yin so. Ani Google di 비 뭐지 좀 생각하잖아 the population rate 그저 총기 캡사마도 릭숑기 축제다 노동을 따기면도 그 디지도 population 간에 저기 그저 라도 범어 사야 틀려 말했어도 근데 말에 딜 mga 열에서 딱 가져 열에서 딱 아주 저 리포트 사야 뉴스지게 비 비저 단계 열에서 좀 이거나 이나 그저기 디 게이 안 든지 텐시나 동아 봐지래 안 동아 가지고 게이 슈비셔람 시 담아서 도야 말고 안 디지도 구글기 로선 단계 요 말했어 디간이야 다들 마다미 김제디 population 더 총라마도 그저기 knowledge 가서 게시주다 디기 자주 좀 따이면 돼서 직디디레스야.
So yes, in terms of the question with the Google, yes, we contacted Google. We had a conversation about Tibetan translation and why Google is not producing Tibetan translation. I tried to contact Google, for a few terms, many years ago, but no replies. And one time I evaluated one of the Google translation project and provided them a feedback about a 12-page, a great Tibetan scholar in Oxford who passed away a few years ago, translated that my evaluation and feedback and submitted this to Google. And then they contact me back. And I put the same question, why you're not working with the Tibetan language? The Google's response is very simple. It's a relationship to the market. And they are not primarily interested in culture or any other than just purely the user. And Google is saying that the Tibetan population or the user of the Tibetan language is not large enough for them to make the profit margin. And they said Tibetans only have a 6 million population, and that's not enough for us to make that margin. And then we done our research. And through our research, we found out that actually the Tibetan language user population is much greater than actual Tibetan, like a combined Tibetan population. The Tibetan user population is about 20 million. But still, Google, have a list of the countries, the languages, over something 75 languages, and Tibetan only, kind of goes to the bottom on that list, and it doesn't help them to improve their profit margin, so they're not interested.
아니 단다 jing dire sure me khanz chelle bad da pe go dusro ine da zo di na zhong gan la chi de ne ba ko de chi du an shugo go zo de gi member ki research paper ya go go de si de ni ngaze sa ni shi ji member ki shibshir ki karso de report chi de yin sro ine tanda ko zo di kilan la malen che de de kan se na zo dire tanda di susu phami ge phege injo sa chu ta pet du se ra an di member
개그 관심 빼셨는데 그거 멤버십.
그거 멤버 주소 나서 러시아 kontak sobo disu sama dum sa chu long re sama chu chi wala phege ja himalaya ta phaba sama dum na jagob chuk na la yar ba ko tiji dum na ane misa chu long re susu di mother language Tibetan ra re ani tene nangso yar ba chuso yar ba and Russia kontak sobo di dombe na sa chu su mosum che jinan sa ni ju ta la la kozu chu chi wala phege ja wor Geshe shawata bhege pecho tan mar. Chikdir, and you are the Europe ginalo, Europe nyamdir ko ola yungi ki nangba saya tukstu. Tana Europe nyamdir ki tosho nalo. And dinani Geshe di tana pecho nante ki juji kore. And kozo bhege pecho Europe ayo. Yeah.
So Google, we have been having conversation with the people at Google. Of course, the Google company policy is one thing, but people working in that company, they're very sympathetic, very understanding. And especially the expert in Google are very interested to hear how we reach to this 20 million figure. So they asked me to further research and prove that there is a 20 million. And we did our research and provided them our feedback. So I asked further Geshe, how do you reach this 20 million? And Geshe saying the Tibetan, as mother tongue Tibetan speaker, the native speakers, is about 10 million. This is you have the Tibet, right, which is for 6 million. And then you have the Himalayan regions, Bhutan, Sikkim, Ladakh, Mon, Arunachal Pradesh, and the upper, Mustang, and these really reach quite a significant numbers. So like the native Tibetan speaker goes up to 10 million. And then if you look at the Inner Mongolia and also Republic of Mongolia, and then the Buryat, the Tibetan language speaking population in Russia, and plus the one of the statistic material published by EU. It mentioned that EU's population of Buddhism, and it indicated something like 80% of that Buddhist population in EU are actually Tibetan Buddhist followers. And then when you add all of these numbers together, so the user of Tibetan language increases, and our kind of estimation is about 20 million. This is how we reach to that number.
Questions from the floor. I'd like to sort of preference all of you who made the effort to, because we do have a number of online questions. But are there any questions? Yes, I can.
Geshe, I have one question, and I have to speak English. I just 1 month ago I saw Monlam IT. I use it. I'm very excited. I try to translate just for fun, and this style of the translation version in Tibetan's more like classical style, and it's not like this contemporary modern writing, non-classical style. Is that you feed mostly like classical text into this machine? I'm just curious. And then I also used Microsoft translators just for fun. I also noticed that a few months ago, and when I translate into English to Tibetans, and then always I saw some Chinese characters appears between Tibetans, and that Chinese translator is like correct translations of what the English equivalent to. So I guess maybe just English to Chinese, Chinese to translation. Probably there's a much easier way to translate from Chinese to Tibetans, just questions. So Monlam has any plan to have a Chinese translation functions? And then also last one, this majority of Tibetan lives in Tibet. So do they have access to this service?
그럼 단지 이제 물론 AI translation 도체 과장 값이 좀 첫째 인스 전대 당구대 물론 그 단지 이교 주제저로 이 인진의 주 비유 교류도 잠바 지금 안쪽에 이게 때 이게 되고 즉 배제는 가게만 이제 망치 지금 안 좋다 이게서 그러와 이즉 가소래 돌로 숙침부터 이 그냥 게 간주는 다 디나 做 배제다 이제 당다 디즈베스 저거 당고대 저건 이번에 마이크로소프트 같은 이게 규제로 이 군주 이규 배주 담배급이야 군주직 참을 이 개인은 주 교류인도 삼바데스 가소를 가게다 균시에 전부 된다도 디인도 어느 몰람이야 마음번에 개이다 비니 받을 이 규제가 둥긴수에 최시요르스 안데네 숨부대야 마음배 몰람기 다단데 징뉴기 주제의 변화를 다투고 그랬어.
예. 디리 단다레 응지 Monlam IT 출루다 떠듭다 쇼르라 약슈디레 가게다 지단 계제디 단당지다 뇽시어레 디응지 로지마티 마르당이레 단다디 약슈디 따디레 출루다 떠듭다 로르규다 드네 레 저란세데 다라레 그 즉시랑 제베나 그 이게 덥다 이게 로다디 대상아지 로션버스 디단티 말에 님하기 벽이 그렇게 이랑 로단 주여 이게 님보도 좀 로단 디 숙체 요래고 가게 되시고 숙체도 그래서 지단 거는 이규제 가게 써야 돼 늦어서 시작 걸리면도 저 시원 침보도 봐서 결투고 있는 나가서 빙변 나주로 따로 제주도 말 납치고 딱한다 그러나 직제지 유튜브 말에 네가 저기 빼고 유튜브를 다 떠들어 드리 아니 지단 계제 교려 되지 아주 다 로직이나 차선 따다래도 그래 안 딜 제동은 저다 레드 프리 에이시아 VOA 안 딜레기 소스 바고잖아 루기 어떤 마그스 비 나디 자나 쇼기 산주기 포스 결정이 좀 본심을 쉬우직디나 로여러 받고 안 디지도 않고 계제셔다 남중이 직 망고직 레기로 받고 직들이 안 이거等단데 배트치 조들이 망고 쉬우지 당아서 깨드냐 로여 그 디지도 가게 뒤잘라 와주 다딘 담는 망고 총 망고진 그래 간다 디기 줍자 망고 거 봐라 디지도 이규르데 다란 차기 레스 직디 디제 안 이거 편한 표시 단 두래 지다이나 가서 디 모델 저 첨부하고 그 온라인 표시 단어 맞다 영어 맞다 이나 가서 디 믹시기 파츠르지 춘춘소에 근데 랑가데 요래 근데 서네네 안드로이드 윈도우스 다 드리기 업로 서네 디 편한 바 터샤디레스 지다 거 표시 단 두래서 제이 왜 저한테 아주 다와지만이 태완이 내가 듣고 쪽이야.
Yes, you're right. Because our primary resources in the AI translation, it's been focusing on Buddhism, philosophical systems. So we have much more input in terms of resource on that, and this is a planned, work, because it's much easier to produce a translation tool for, say, conversations. Whereas right now, it's much harder and more need in terms of a translation tool for technical subject. So this has been a concerted effort, and you can see our machine, does quite a good job. Then, yes, we are right now working on kind of conversation, or what you call this daily speech, or dialogue, working on that, and this will come out soon. And then in terms of the Microsoft translation tool, there one of the major shortcoming is know this vast collection of Buddhist resources. So if you ask Microsoft translation to do a Tibetan Buddhist text, they won't be able to do any of this, translation that our machine is trained to do that. Especially our machines to train the classical Tibetan, as you mentioned. So it will translate not only, proses, but also verses well. And Microsoft is not able to recognize this pattern of the language, especially for verses, in which the Tibetan literature has a vast amount of resources. So that's one thing. And then the Chinese translation. We are working with our partners in Taiwan to produce the Tibetan Chinese platform for translation, and this will also come out soon.
Does Monlam AI currently have the generative capabilities like ChatGPT?
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, there's another one.
Oh, okay.
But I wasn't sure if they said that the LLMs that y'all are working towards, is that like being built from scratch, or are you like customizing on top of OpenAI or Azure OpenAI or whatever?
하는 건 비나 차를 스토어 디어베스. 얘네 디 language model 되게 쉐드 좀 하고 open source 미신 배주된 거를 권해야 소요돼.
야, 단어디, 야, 페퍼라인 단어디 차리 요마래. 이네 양아들이 서샤거든요. 이네 디 backend 차리 GPT래. 제 엔티파라디 미신 트랜슬레이션 배쳤다시. 그게 누구? 이네 단어가지기 고니 사바디 language model 쓰고는 당부디. 딜라 표기기 팁티 숨지기 정답되게 그렇고. 쟤네 안디네 language model 디 사위는 아니고 이게 주다 따야 직접적이야 되니 고대로 따야 단tam을 여러고 간다 좀 듣기 내가 제대로 디상마치 또 그래 안 디네 디시고 되는 large language model 디 비유란 게 되는데 안 디가나다 다 이제 게 드라마를 딱 가져라라 루제 아니고 저기 아주 language model 망고 용어를 가서 낭박이 language model 되지마 용어를 계획에 용어를 아니 지단계 지금 용어를 안딩 아주 감상한 소리였어 이러 디소마트가 지시라 되어 말했어 디지털 자위 디 컨셉단도 다 찍버려서 성으로 아니 단다야 컨셉 싸워드네 레어를 매드 라이트 생긴데 컨셉 인지 뭐야 구글에서 싸워드네 되는데 아니 아주 컨셉 싸워서 롭존치기 치기 전에 다 가게 야가 있나 디가 나서 트레이닝 되겠어 저다 소스 집자들이었다
So in terms of the language model we talked about, we are really building that machine from scratch. We're inputting, many of the Tibetan resources and sources first, and train the machine so that it will be able to add to proofreading, editing, and restructuring, and the speech pattern and so on. So that's what we're working on. And once you really have enough resources and the original sources, and then you can improve this by relying on some of the what you call this add-on programs, like Google is creating this like add-on features for this language model, and we can either adopt to it or also create our own feature. There is, I think, believe the Tibetan chatbot available in Tibetan, but they're not that extensive.
Questions here?
I tried to play around with the ChatGPT features to see if it could translate into Tibetan or like generate Tibetan text. I can't read it, so but has there been like some sort of analysis done in terms of how accurate it is, the Tibetan text that it generates?
그런 단들이 비유 차 GPT 도와 비주 당 비스 인지게 비유 교로선 비유 대용도 되는 그런 비유 야우싱매 그런 데인데 저도는 이게 저도는 비제 근데도
야, 망고 차이스로 이나 디다 조가지고 이게 디레 미시 트랜슬레이션이 네트인데 그 이게 뭐 유튜브마다 들어가고
콘도 단지 연결죠 봐. 또 그런 차 GPT는 비유 교제
그러나도 집자시라 요 말이 베베고 알람이 다 인지가 봐 저저 인연이마다 저를 GPT는 나가지고 최단 렉션 이 벽이 렉션하니 저의 인지가 나이구나 겨샤와 파 자자 직슬이 말에 딘나니 저 디기 제가 벽이나 레비아 말에 딘메디 그 저를 GPT는 벽 거지다 빼대 지단이 내준도 되는데 야르스 뭐도 쇼링단데 빼뉴뉴레스
Yes, I tried. I'm aware this chat GTP, right? GPT. Yes, there are, some very limited, informations available because amount of the original sources that they have is very limited. I mentioned to you, they over 3,000 books translated and only 1%, available to public sources. So they rely on that. So what they, produce are incredibly limited.
Any other? There's a question here. We have a lot of questions online. We're running out of time. I hope we can get to some. Can anyone participate or help with new projects? And if so, how?
단지 먼저 냠 레시저 봐. 디간이 아니 건조 디간 participate 냠슈 전에 되게 돼. 그리고 저 망고 때 토전선 근데서 쳐버렸어.
야 아니 일단 어제 디간아 냠주치야라 빼랑가만고 요레스와 그 테크니컬 거는 냠주치기 있는데 아니 데이터 애노테이션 거는 냠주치기 있는데 아니 지당이 프로젝트 그런 거는 냠주치야 있는데 디간서 순라지기 제대로 나가서 계제셔 줘 레스와 안디 먼저 미디 더 리션 손접다 다별 동에 제대인데 이 순라지기 제가 나가서 디 계제셔에서 냠도 제 가르쳐야 되나서 딱이 안디 백에서 뭐들어 안디지도 나가서 에 contact.monlam AI 이 이메일 지겨서 안디가 라미 순라지기 되버셔비나 나가서 디바 램프 쳐버렸어요. 그때 쳐버. contact
Monlam IT. Yes, there are ways you can participate in terms of the field. You can help us with the technology, or you can help us with the data analysis, or participate in other functions of the project. You can contact us by visiting our website, and there's a particular, I think, email address, the contact, dot Monlam. There's the Monlam.ai, and there's a contact field, and you can contact us through that.
Questions in the room? Then I will go. Let's see. This one was already answered in part about the Tibetan GPT and sort of the timeline of when it would be available. Tibetan GPT?
Tibetan GPT 가지들이야 지만 배주된 것으로 처그랬어.
and did it on the Shatu Mindura. In a manze, large language model, training table, Yuntala text file, the GB gas orders. The D loyal the Nancy should carry Yusra. The Nancy Laway over the GB ship you up to GB up to the Nancy Law the digit. The text file around GB gas order, jig the dire, any yini and the training table, GB Shumbogorba. D and Lamsan Yara Rime the better unit in a Dangazuki, okay, Lonism Nalwanzuki, Rivagius, yeah.
So I think we may be able to produce this within 2 years, to work and to produce an effective tool for the chat thing. you need to have at least 100, gigabyte of the, text files. Right now, we have about 50 gigabyte resources, text file.
Geshe-la, is there a straightforward way to avoid depending on translating Tibetan knowledge into an underlying English or Western language model when training AI? I think that they're asking, does he rely on an English English or Western language model to train, or is he doing? Yeah.
아니 디 이교 단데 디 수백을 그런 게 단데 인지 다들 도단처럼 English models, language models, 디 배주 단지 쓰는 거래요. 두무 메인부 벽에 다게지 붙여봐. 걔들 디 직접 접촉으로 language model 디 배주 단지 쓰는 거라서.
그래서 가야 말해. 다다 아주 디 neural network 시로 generative AI 디가 나오는 거가 neural network 시로
neural network.
neural network. 미성로 동단이 주름저로 디 그런 게 그런 컨셉이야. 디 실라션 저기 디 안디 깨달 것이 되고 그래야 말이다. 그런 미성로 동단이 주름저로 디 너저다 샤르가 쳐버 개어 말이야. 정말 찍버렸어. 디리스.
So to really rely on both the Western the model or that of the Tibetan. What we are relying right now is called the neural network. Basically, to really work with the neurology and the functions of our brain or how the brain generates these pattern of speech. And so it really wouldn't matter what language pattern or structure that you rely on.
Any other from the floor? Okay, I'll plow ahead with these. Are you considering an open source publication of your AI code as well as of the AI models so that potentially any AI developer could join forces with you?
아니 기실라우스 상교 AI 저거 이슈가 open code 수요지 미수지 주어디가서 주기야 되는데 처시
야, 아주 당부디 당아저기 그런 프로젝트 인디 디기는 당이 주름직도 그래. 아니네 아주 저거 자자 눈치서 아주 오픈 소스나 제투를 자자 숨지 제투 말이죠. 그래서 디기 당원이죠. 당 아주 버라 컨트랙셔서 주주 당대 가서 줄로 제투 말이죠. 그 님은 배치단기 앞에 인저를 저런데 아주 알슬라이나 아주 디 제투를 이나디 로직이 지라마도 대제도 말해서 한 대단 시그랬어요.
Yes, we can and we're planning maybe at later stage. Right now, it's an ongoing project, but after a few years, we can make this into kind of a public domain or the open source. But we're only able to do about 70%. Of that code, make it open access. This is because a lot of the materials and IT section that we're working with are copyrighted, and we cannot, provide this to a third party. But within the next 2 years, we'll be able to make this into kind of public accessible sources. Some of this feature. Then I also forgot to get back to one of your questions about. I think one of your questions, how can you make the AI available for the Tibetans inside Tibet? The question is, yes, the number of ways that we are looking and engaging with our fellow Tibetan users. One of the suggestion right now we are looking into is creating app where it will be more kind of compacted. It's a little bit smaller than the server bus, but it still can be downloadable through this, either Google, Android, or from the Apple. And you can download the app and work offline. That's one of the plans for making them accessible to Tibetans inside Tibet.
Here's a promising one. Would you be interested in speaking with employees of OpenAI while you're in California? Are you offering?
California, the issue pastorality and the open source 예문주바 OpenAI. 군주님 보여 진도도 yes.
Yeah, you do.
Did you hear that?
단단하게 대화 총만 손스러워.
So probably the best way would be to contact through the email address
Yes,
on the Monlam AI website.
we're very interested, but we do not have any contact.
Yes,
at
so
the office.
please, anonymous attendee, please, if you could directly contact at the email. I see we have a question in the room.
Monlam OCR, Monlam OCR, can it recognize scanned woodblock picture, such as on TBRC?
Yes, did you hear the question? The OCR can it work with woodblock, text, and Geshe said yes, it would recognize the woodblock print.
Yeah, only then the short Burma che, Zangbar che, and the Gumbum Burma, the pay on the Yosra. Then I'm doing on the best focus of Shimbish.
And right now we're working with the shell print, the Lhasa, and also Tachilimpu and the Gumpum. These three woodblock and the Derke printing woodblock, and it's working quite well.
Time for one more question, which is from Tenshu. Geshe, my heartfelt congratulations on this achievement. My question is about translation. Can you please share some of the Tibetan or English words that are most translated on Monlam AI?
Okay. 이제라 디 저지치스 베펜더신부터 저 단도부터 배주 다니죠 봐. 이게는 이게 규례죠 봐. 단위의 망수 군도 가르 세고도. 다 인지 both English Tibetan or only Tibetan. 이 인지다 비유나야 다 군도 규례서 막 단위의 망수 권해줘 봐. 다 단위의 군도 고스. 디 가르도 투네 진이 소나 두겠어.
네 하면서 다 이내 양저기 이제다 비단 제외는다 양저 심지어 뭐 그죠. 타니 영정은 배주 맛이 되래래. 네 말이라 저래.
I really haven't particularly paid attention to this like translation of the word. For the Tibetans, many people looking up how to translate the Tibetan word re, mare, and that re, and all of someone saying, what is this word?
The frequency.
So that's when you look at the frequencies, that's one of the most typed or inputted word. It's a Tibetan auxiliary word, a verb for something like re. How would you say that in?
But yeah, auxiliary verb is not.
Is
Like
Re, ra, jenggo re, ta re.
Is not, is it or is it not? Like that.
So yeah, many people were looking for that word.
Sure, since you came to the snoop.
Kind of like what y'all were mentioning earlier with the, training, the models and whatnot, and, it'd be focusing on self-interest, input, right? The output is only as good as the input and whatnot. So right now, if you work with ChatGPT and ask it certain questions about certain topics, it, there's a big disparity. It gives really biased answers for some topics. So in terms of like the Tibetan text that we have, like, is that something y'all are thinking about? Like, how do you identify that? And how do you remedy that?
Sure. The ChatGPT server, 이게 군도 다들 주어진 지구와 군도 랜드 배치 가소로 바이스 뭐 첩시 전에 디 가소로다 초기 탱기 랜드는 뭔고 이것도 즉 ChatGPT는 인지나 주어치는 군도 랜저와 디 가소로 지 장고 매무제 직대 탱기 유에 대해서도 추리 제품이 뭔고 이것도 더 탱기 기실라 발에서 먼저 파 미신 정다제도 야고 맞에 미신 거지 다 진지 미신 저비는 거 디면서 소리 디면서 야는 말 아니야. 단대지 주어주는 뭔고지야 주어주도 탱기진 랭게는 좀 디토리아 공부실이 좀 아파 미신 트레이닝 제가야 공부실이 그랬어.
야, 네, 아니 그 로기 요도 지기 탄다데 자잘로 들리 그 렌자야 봐. 또나 마시데 자잘로 가서 마야나 그디간도 그랬다. 안티제도 텐셔기 거기 자자마야나 그데 마데 딜리로. 안 직대 아니 이거도 그야 저는 자나도 저는 그저기 양 코란주 따와던 중에 잡로라 픽터 쇼드는 서고 그랬고 AI랑도 난 가져 먼저 룩샤로 고 지도 그 미가투야 말이네 잡로라 픽터 쇼드를 빼 먹으시니 아니 그런 쪽에 다원한 쇼다 만팅게 소마 가야로 다들 요리 아니 오픈AI에 접로로 필요해 첨부 수요래고 망고지 그 당알로 미링 알라 믹스에 다타 메시아노 담을 시리즈 그 근데서 이나다 디다 조조다 디레서 줍자랑 디 소스 디 담보 종다티로 그 줍자티레 디지 다 담보 트레이닝 때도 서서 마시는 빼냐가 열었어 좀 마셔 시리즈 그러죠.
Yes, you're right. If we are not careful in terms of our inputting the source files, then the machine basically look at what are the domains of the source file, and then it picks up the most frequently or the highest kind of inputted material and make that selection. That's one factor in relation to the source file. So looking at what is the majority of the source file saying, and the machine picks up that. A second element is the filtering. There, behind the machine, both the Chinese government or also, the AI, the origins, they created this like a filter or filtering system where it really filters what information that they share or what information that they're forbidden. So this is the second kind of element in terms of how they process the knowledge. And therefore, it's a machine, and that's where we have to be extremely cautious about what we input and how we train the machine so that they can overcome this biased information.
There's so many more questions online. I'm sorry we didn't get to all of them. Geshe Monlam is actually headed to Queens after this, so he has to be on his way. Someone asked for the email. It's contact@monlam, MONLAM.ai. The website is monlamit.com, or there's another website, monlamai.ai. Thank you all for coming. Geshe Monlam, I learned so much today. I'm sure all of you did. We expanded our